Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Alexandra, a marketing manager here at Perficient, and I'm excited to be moderating today's webinar on DevOps and accelerating your time to deployment. We are recording today, and we'll be sending you the recording after the session through email. Time permitting, we'll also be answering questions at the end. So throughout the webinar, please type those into the chat box. This will be an interactive discussion, so please ask questions throughout as they come up. We'll also be asking you some polling questions during the presentation. In a moment, I'll hand it over to our speakers. But first, let me give you a little bit of information on Perficient. Perficient is the leading digital transformation consulting firm serving Global 2000 and enterprise customers throughout North America. Perficient and our digital agency deliver information technology, management consulting, and creative capabilities to our customers. We have a broad network of locations, as you can see here, across the United States. Founded in 1997, we have nearly 3,000 employees, and we formed strategic partnerships with all of the major technology vendors and have dedicated solution and industry practices. One of those major technology vendors is joining us on our call today, which would be IBM. Now let me give you a little background on our speakers today. Rhonda Kaiser-Oaks is the Managing Director of DevOps for North America here at Perficient. Since joining 2 years ago, Rhonda has been focused on building the DevOps practice here at Perficient, forging partnerships with industry leaders including IBM, Chef, CloudBees, and Sonatype. Greg Wonderly is the worldwide executive for IBM DevOps Urban Code. Greg joined IBM through the Urban Code acquisition in 2013 and has been instrumental in developing and introducing Urban Code offerings into the marketplace, such as Urban Code Deploy, Urban Code Release, and Urban Code Build. At this point, I will hand it over to Rhonda to kick off today's session.
Hey everybody, good afternoon, and just to reiterate, thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us today. We truly do appreciate it. We know you guys all are working and are busy. As Alexandra said, I'm just going to do a little bit more introduction of myself, and I think Greg, you're going to do the same. I've been in IT for almost 20 years. I've been leading global transformations for companies like Whirlpool, Harley-Davidson, Anthem, and General Physics. So I've been around for a little while. As I look at how we can help customers achieve success in the DevOps space, I look to not only the capabilities that we can provide to our customers through their success, but also through our partnerships, such as IBM, which, through working with Greg directly, to help you guys understand that we are truly looking at a thought leadership perspective on how we deliver DevOps. And we're certainly going to be very interested in your thoughts during this webinar. So it might be a little bit non-traditional as we talk about amongst friends, Greg and I amongst friends, talking about market trends, partnerships, things like that. So would really, really like you guys' thoughts and inputs as we try to, build out our best way. I call it our Steve Jobs of DevOps brand image as Perficient as we're trying to be here. And so Greg, you want to add a little bit about yourself before we start getting into the slides?
Yeah, sure, Rhonda. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us. I've been in DevOps since before there was a word for it. We used to call it build, test, deploy, and release, and we'd call people up and say, hey, how would you be interested in that? When I first started in the DevOps business before it was DevOps, the marketplace wasn't great. We're looking about 2008, and everyone was looking how can we do more with less. Technology was changing. Virtual machines were popping into the world and the universe. People had to start developing applications faster and better, and I've been real blessed to be able to work with hundreds of companies in that period of time to help them with their tools, of course, but also identify ways to improve their processes and people and even leadership. So we're looking forward to the conversation today, Rhonda.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you just said. I mean, I remember that too back in the old mainframe days. This stuff's been around for a while, so DevOps is not really new. It's just gaining a different kind of momentum. And so with that, in this section here, we're going to talk a little bit about market trends. And, we really want you guys to help us understand kind of where your heads are at, what you're seeing in your respective companies, your positions. Are you seeing... are you reading these market trends? Are you interested? Are you watching? For example, 10% of global enterprises are implementing application release automation. And so, just curious if you guys are doing something similar Are you getting what you need from your organizational staff? Are you going to specific system integrators to help you? What vendors you're looking at? Things like that. And so I think, again, on this same topic, by 2018, you can see that this space is going to continue to grow. And as new apps use cloud-enabled continuous delivery and continuous integration strategies and continuous testing and shift left and those type of things, are you guys thinking about this stuff, and do you really realize that it may very well hit home? And so, Greg, as we were discussing the other day, I'm sure you're seeing something very similar with this perspective metrics.
I am. What I'm seeing are companies are seeing a change in technology, and the change has been going on for decades, and it continues to go on and evolve. A few years back, 3 or 4 years back, we're talking about virtual machines being the big thing. How do we deploy to virtual machines? We start to talk about cloud now. Almost everybody has either a hybrid cloud, a public cloud, or a private cloud that they're looking to deploy to. There's containers. There's all types of new technologies that people are working with, and there's technologies that are on the horizon that none of us are even talking about today that will be there in the near future. The key is, how do we leverage technology, take advantage of it, and get benefit quickly to it? And I think we've got some statistics on the next slide that will help us with that.
Yeah, we certainly do. And so folks on the phone, we're going to be asking you a polling question here in just a little bit. So on this particular slide in particular, we are seeing some disruption in some of the companies that we work with. And I think, Greg, you and I were talking about, what does this really mean? And are we really thinking in a way, as technologists, but are we thinking in a way from how this affects the business? And so I'll go with a couple of my examples, and I know you're going to add a really neat one as well. But so, for example, as a consumer in the banking industry, when I look at the financial industry specifically, I use my phone to deposit checks. And when I look at what bank I'm loyal to and what technology they use to provide the ability for me to sit at the dinner table with my family and deposit a check right from my phone, to me that's very convenient. And so when I look at technology and how these banks enable me to be innovative and productive with my time, I'm not jumping in my car trying to find an ATM machine. These things are important to me as a consumer. So as a technologist, when I look at the benefits of DevOps platforms to be able to prevent disruption, but more importantly to be able to innovatively enable these companies, that's going to be the game changer, I think, in these industries. Healthcare is another one. We do a lot of work in healthcare. I've worked with a company that had an oncology program, and so they wanted to be able to deliver these capabilities to cancer patients. And so just trying to kind of hit home for you guys from a realistic point of view from the consumer side, as we as technologists look at DevOps and how it really not only helps prevent disruption, but how it enables these companies to stay competitive and meet the needs of their consumers. And so, Greg, I know you have a pretty cool story, too. We talked about it the other day. I remember where I was on that.
Actually, there's several things, and we look at the slide, and it shows that we can do things much faster, 95% implementation time. But the question gets to be, why is that important, and why does that matter to us? And it depends on your business. When we are making changes to our code, there's reasons why we do it. Number one, we have a change request. We might have a bug fix. We might have a new feature, or might have to do a refresh or a new update. Might have to have a new product altogether. In order to deliver those faster, there's consequences to not being able to do so. We can take a look at companies who have been able to do a refresh on their website from what used to take 240 hours down to 40 minutes. Why is that important? Well, on June 25th, 2009 was a big day in history, at least here for me. One of my heroes, Michael Jackson, died. Now, God rest his soul. It was a tragedy, and we all miss him. But on the June 26th, Amazon.com had everything up and running with every Michael Jackson song, every T-shirt, every book, every record, every video. Anything that you wanted was available to be seen on their website. Their nearest competition took them 2 weeks to get there. And that really defined a marketplace where Amazon could react fast enough to make a change in that short of a period of time, a complete refresh where they could respond to the marketplace. That's a huge difference. Other things that are even more contemporary, back in April, Delta had a big problem with their IT systems. They had a failure and they had thousands of flights that were in trouble and that were behind. And what happened is there was an IT glitch. Well, we're going to have issues, we're going to have problems, but our ability to be able to identify what the problem is, react to it, and make the change, the faster we do it, minutes matter. So if it was something that took 15 minutes before, now it's too quick to even count. That makes a big difference on that impact. It was something that took 2 hours, now taking only minutes. That's a huge impact to the bottom line. This one drug on for a long time, and according to BuzzFeed, which is an article that I read, pre-tax income loss was $125 million by not being able to react fast enough. Other companies in the transportation industry that we've worked with had one person who knocked out a bunch of servers just by accident. They're doing some coding, knocked out a bunch of servers. It took them, one person messed up 800 VMs. 150 flights were delayed. Well, you say, what's the big deal for the flights be delayed? Well, there's a cost at every airport for the airplane to be there. There's fuel costs. There's resource costs such as pilots and teams of people that have to maintain it. This is real money that goes to the bottom line. So if we're looking at applications, we have to be able to develop faster, and the pace of technology is faster today than it ever has been before. We can spin up applications and fixes faster than we ever could before, and in order to be competitive, we have to stay on top of it. This is why it's so important to go from 3 weeks to 4 hours, or 97% reduction in your cost, not having to be up all night and not having to be on your phones to make things happen. This is why these are so important.
Yeah, I remember the days when I was called in the middle of the night to fix some anomaly that occurred. So we certainly want to be able to react quickly to business needs. So guys, the polling question's coming up here. And so for you guys, I'm just curious, to what degree do you agree, or are you thinking about these market trends? Do you feel they apply to you? So you guys can go ahead and start answering these questions. But I wonder how many folks in IT really understand the impact of what they do, their personal job, or how they lead an organization, or all of the above, affect the IT organization's ability to react quickly, to deploy capabilities faster, things like that. And so,
yeah, Rhonda, I'm starting to see almost every company I'm working with has an awareness of DevOps today. And it's spinning from a couple of years ago talking about DevOps being important to today is how do we implement DevOps, whether we're doing it on an enterprise or we're doing it for a team. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, it looks like we've got an even response between strongly agree and somewhat agree, and I would hope that you guys start looking at this stuff, because it is the IT organization that really provides that competitive edge to the business, so that your respective companies can stay ahead of that curve and be the company that your consumers are loyal to. So I think I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. Skip to the results. Close the poll. Thank you very much for taking the time to answer that question. We really appreciate it. Your thoughts are extremely important in terms of how we are going to mature and grow our business. And so on that note, this is kind of the DevOps landscape, and I am seeing some questions come in here. And so, for me, a lot of times when I talk to different folks, and it just depends on, who I'm talking to, and I know Greg will probably say the same thing, but when you think about ARA, or application release automation, these companies are some of the leaders in the industry. And so, if you're hearing about these companies, if you're already doing, leveraging some of these technologies, these are also some of the technologies that Perficient is looking at to enable capabilities. So for us, it's more about thought leadership to provide a platform, if you will, not just a tool, so that you can, deliver your capabilities faster. And as Greg and I are talking about how IBM plays into this landscape, the products that he supports are extremely important to the way you can manage the technology stack to get capabilities out faster. I'm going to talk about the oncology cancer product just one more time and relate it to this slide. When we were talking to this particular healthcare company, they said, look, our business is around helping customers get healthy again. And so we have to have a way to manage the technology stack so that we can not only deploy capabilities faster and kind of bring all those back-end systems together, whether it's databases or web application servers, or if you're on the infrastructure side, network, F5, whatever. Managing that stack to deploy those capabilities faster becomes extremely important when you start looking at a particular vendor or partner versus just buying a product and trying to, fit it into an immediate need. Looking at it more long-term helps you guys provide that more strategic, innovative, flexible, platform to not only build that code, but to get it to production faster with code quality. Security is a big thing. Testing is a big thing. And so just think about getting that product all the way to consumer usage, as we've been talking about. These particular partners help us provide that capability to streamline the ability to get those features out to the consumer faster. And so, Greg, I know you have something to say about this slide as
Sure.
well. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a great slide, because if we take a look at our own technology, one of the first things I would do if I was looking to begin in DevOps in my organization is I want to do an inventory of the technologies that I have in place. What artifact repository do I have? What build tool do I have? What deployment tools do I have? What release tools do I have? Do I have any cloud services that I'm working with? Do I have what all applications do I have? Are they current tools? Are they things that are a little bit old that need to be updated? And I would start doing an inventory of what I have. Then I would start to take a look at my deployment pipeline from the idea to the delivery of the application, from beginning with putting out requirements to testing to building to deploying to releasing and to provisioning out into the cloud and orchestration. What do I have in place, and what are the things that are slowing me down? I'll look for the bottlenecks. What are the things that are going to be my constraints? And those are the things I would start to take a look and prioritize as far as automating. So we're talking about the application release automation. Those are the tools that IBM markets that I represent, and we provide build, deploy, test, and release applications, which we call DevOps landscape. But almost every company I go to has the types of tools that you see on here today. They're doing containers, they're doing cloud, and the cloud wars have just begun, and there are some that are pulling ahead of others, but I don't think it's determined yet. So having tools that are flexible, that allows you to be able to pull in and use and leverage as much technology that you have, and also identify areas that you need to improve, and then you can put together a really good plan. I know that's something that Rhonda and her team can help you with, and it's something that our team can help you with as well.
And so, guys, here it comes. There's a polling question, and we're going to ask you which one of these technologies are you using on your DevOps journey. And again, I would say, so there's the polling question if you guys want to go ahead and select all that apply to you. But I think it's funny what you just said, Greg. The cloud wars have begun, and they have. I mean, I remember when Amazon wasn't really a player in this space, and Microsoft Azure was pretty big in the cloud space, and now we've got Google coming up in the cloud space. And so I'm just really curious, what you guys are thinking in terms of not only cloud technologies, because, I realize, having an infrastructure background, that cloud can be a big no-no in some companies, but it is gaining momentum. So even from a DevOps perspective, and not just cloud related, but how are you guys providing like this entire capability? So go back to, thinking about maybe your banks that you're loyal to, or your healthcare provider, or maybe the car you drive. What makes you loyal to these particular vendors, and are you looking at ways to creatively stitch them together sometimes? So I'll just use IBM as an example. maybe you're a solid blue customer, IBM customer, but you're looking at open source tools. And the question is, why are you looking at open source tools? So think about those things as you're thinking about your DevOps journey and how you're providing the ERP for IT, if you will. So if you're familiar with SAPs or the Oracles of the world, technologies of the world, that's what DevOps is really going to start helping you achieve is how do you provide an entire modular capability to get those capabilities or those applications with quality through tested methodologies. They're secure. So that's why we're looking at these particular industry-leading partnerships as we help customers.
I'd also say, too, that while you're looking at applications and any of the tools that you're looking at, you want tools that are going to be open enough to allow you to leverage as many of the tools that you have, as less amount of disruption as possible so that you can continue to leverage the knowledge, expertise, and investment you have, yet be able to move forward. So being able to have someone sit down with you and help you identify those and put a plan together would be really good. And while I mentioned that the cloud wars aren't really over yet, I was just in London at the DevOps Summit, and there were some informal polls of who's using what cloud, and pretty much all the main ones were there, whether it's IBM, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, whether it's Google. There's a plethora of those, and companies, as I speak to, may have an agreement with one, but more than likely they have several agreements with many of them. So if you use a tool like the IBM Urban Code with the Blueprint Designer, you'll have the capability that regardless of what your cloud choice is today or what your cloud choice is in 2 years, you'll be able to deploy and provision to those. So when you make a change, you don't have to rip out the guts and start over. So you want to keep those in mind as technology changes. You want to be able to have as least amount of disruption to your organization as possible.
Yeah, so guys, again, really appreciate you paying attention and answering these questions. We actually use this information to improve ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to the results and close this particular poll. And just, again, fair warning, there's going to be a couple more polling questions in here because your feedback is important as we look at how we can improve helping our customers, yourselves included. So perception. So one of the questions that actually came up in the chat window was, what does DevOps stand for? You know, there's all this stuff out there, and even I look at these areas and I think to myself, I've been in IT since the 90s. I actually own the middle 3 books. I will tell you guys, I've skimmed some of them and I've read others of them, but as Greg was saying earlier, the concept of DevOps has been around forever. If you're familiar with SDLC or Waterfall or ITIL or ITSM, you'll know that DevOps is not really that new. It's maturing in the way that we can deliver products to the customer faster. And so, Greg, I know you want to talk about these books.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about these books and we're going to talk about perceptions.
Yeah, so to really understand DevOps, it's really from getting the idea to delivery and be able to do that faster. And if you take a look back in 1984, there was a book that was written on lean manufacturing by Goldratt, and the book is called The Goal, and it was really talking about the theory of constraints. So, and I've done a video on this, which you can access off of YouTube, but it really talks about that if we were looking at an assembly line for manufacturing, we can only go as fast as the slowest moving part. So if we have the frame of the car that's on the assembly line and it's moving down, and then we have the doors that are automatically put on by a robot, and yet we come up to where the tires and the wheels are, and we have to put the wheels on, and we have 4 people that are manually putting on the lug nuts, that takes a lot more time. That becomes your bottleneck or your constraint. And you can't go any faster than that slowest moving part. So the idea behind the goal is identify what those constraints are, what those bottlenecks are, and do what you can to reduce those and eliminate them. And once you do, you'll have the next one. Well, that was a pretty important book for manufacturing. And as it stated, Jez Humble said last week, who wrote the next book, Continuous Delivery, that the Toyota method of manufacturing didn't become popular because they were building junky cars faster. It became popular because they were delivering better cars faster. And this is what we're looking at with continuous delivery and DevOps, is we want to be able to deliver better applications faster, not poor applications faster, but better applications faster. And 2011, Jez wrote the book, and the idea behind that one was no one's going to have release weekends any longer. You're not going to have to be stressing out overnight working on that stuff. When we're delivering continuously, we'll have the capability to do that. Now in 2013, Gene Kim wrote a book that was really based on The Goal, which is a 1984 book in the left quadrant. And if you read them both, you'll see the similarities of them. But in order to bring this into the world of IT and software, you'd have to use your imagination. Well, with Gene's book, what was brilliant about it was he takes imagination out and he shows the theory of constraints and makes it very evident on how it affects the entire organization, from the CIO to the shareholders to the marketing people to the people doing all the work to the superheroes. All of that stuff is in the book. So if you want to read about how DevOps can affect an entire organization, that's pretty good. But up to 2013, we're out talking to people, telling them how important it is to do DevOps and encouraging them to take a look at it. But as you take a look at 2015 through 2017, the book's coming out now as a DevOps handbook and the DevOps adoption playbook. These are the books on how to go do it. These are playbooks. These are not so much that it's important to do, but it's how to do. Almost every organization is doing some flavor of DevOps, or at least looking to or starting to. Now we're at the point that how do we do it? And I want to encourage you too not to be overwhelmed, because where do we start is a question that Rhonda and I often get is, I've got these applications, I need to start doing this, how do I start? I'd say take a look at your process, what tools you have in place, which ones need updated, and then put a plan together to get started. I've seen companies with the help of Rhonda and her team get up and started in a couple of months or less and start getting some applications deployed and start doing some DevOps. So we've come a long way in quite a few years. There's a lot more work to do, but I'd encourage you to read any of these books. They're all really terrific and can help you have a deeper insight into the world of DevOps.
And so, I'll just add a little funny to this one. Hopefully y'all are still listening out there. But for me, I'm so guilty of I'm going to skip to the end and see what happens. So depending on who you are, and hopefully you guys are on mute and you get a little chuckle out of this one, but if you don't want to read all these books, we do have ways to help make decisions. And I think for me, as I used to be on the other side of the consulting desk, I've been in consulting about 5 years now, so 15 of my years were leading on the other side. I sometimes just wanted to know the MapQuest way to get from A to B. And, if you use Google Maps, you can get 2 to 3 routes from A to B. Sometimes one's quicker, sometimes one's 8 minutes slower. And so you might think, now you have Waze, and so you can find ways to navigate your way to something faster. And so I think what we're seeing in a lot of ways is the companies that we work with want those cliff notes, and they want a way to achieve something in DevOps faster. And it's not always a full transformation. It's sometimes just, get me started somewhere. And so if you're looking at our elephant here, I don't know if you guys ever heard the phrase, you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. I mean, nobody could certainly eat this guy, all in one bite. And so these are some of the things that we've been hearing from some of our customers. And again, I know that's also a question in the chat window. And so DevOps can mean something different to wherever you sit in the organization. So if you're on the security team, compliance as code might be important to you. If you're on the QA testing team, shift left testing or continuous testing could be DevOps to you. If you're a developer, how do you do agile development and get your features into the pipeline faster? Agile comes up a lot, so Scrum teams talk about DevOps. And then on the operations side, they're probably thinking back to the legacy thinking a little bit of, give me that build artifact. So the build meisters might be, getting a build artifact out of a source control system, and they want to get it in that build pipeline and get it through the environment so that, I can sit at my table and deposit that check from my cell phone. And so that's kind of how operations people think. And so the misconceptions of DevOps is it really affects the entire organization. And so sometimes there are organizational changes that have to occur. Sometimes it's just a maturity approach for something like continuous integration. Sometimes it's just the way you might handle your branching and merging. And so really you need to think about how it affects your organization and then think about how it affects others in the organization. And then we have one more slide, and we do have a polling question, so hopefully y'all are still paying attention. But I don't know, Greg, do you want to add anything to this one before I get to the people, process, technology?
I do. Everyone's technology stack is going to be different, and your needs are going to be different. I like to ask customers when I speak with them to step back for a moment when they're looking at beginning a DevOps initiative and look for the core reason, the root cause of what they need, right? Why do I need to do DevOps? Why do I need to deliver faster? Is it the line of business is demanding that you deliver more quickly to them? Is the marketplace driving it? Do you have a new website that you want to get out, or you have a new data center that you're putting into place? Once we can sit down with you and we can do a DevOps readiness assessment where we can start to identify what tools you have in place, what bottlenecks that you have, what constraints are there, and we can help you prioritize where to get started and how to get going. And once again, with the help of Rhonda and her team and also with the IBM team, we can get you started in 30 days or less on a DevOps initiative where you can start to see some real measurable results. So it takes just a little bit of sitting down and getting to know each other.
Yeah, so one more slide, guys, and we have a polling question coming up. So what is DevOps? DevOps is really a combination of three major factors. I always like to start with people because I don't care what technology you work with, somebody still, they have to do the work. And so as I look at people and who's impacted, so let's say your C-level executive makes a decision and maybe you are the C-level executive on this call, I don't know. Or maybe you're the engineer implementing these technologies where those decisions have been made on high. The people are going to be the ones that are going to enable the technology to work together. So from a planning organization, so maybe you have a PMO or a business office in IT that gets the requirements from the business side and you guys are trying to figure out how you start planning your product sprints or your releases, all the way to, so the left side of the spectrum, starting in SDLC to, checking that code out, developing it, testing it, scanning the code for quality. I think that's going to be a pretty hot item in the coming months and years, especially with all the security stuff you're seeing on the news. So code quality and testing is going to be pretty big. And then as you think about capabilities that we've been talking about, ARA, release automation, getting the artifact in the pipeline faster so that it can get to production faster, those processes have to work together in order for that technology box to come alive. And so all these things are really factors. Now, I hope you guys aren't thinking, this is a lot and it's overwhelming. It's really not. There are, I'm going to go back to the MapQuest example. You can pick a path and you can decide what's most important and you can scale that path. You can shift left, you can shift right, you can start in the middle. It really depends on where you are. And I would assert that every company we've worked with is somewhere in this mix doing something, and they've been doing it. Maybe they don't realize they're doing it, or maybe they do realize they're doing it and they just need a little extra guidance to get them down the path quicker. And so really it's a combination of all these things, and sometimes it's more of one than the other. And so
Rhonda,
as you think about
sorry to interrupt. I see it all the time. We go into customers and they can have the best tools in the world, but if they don't have good processes in place, they're just really automating bad processes. If they don't have people to drive the change within the organization, then the whole thing starts to really fall apart. There's another element that was put into this at the DevOps Summit in London a couple of weeks ago, and that's leadership. So I think that's something that there's a lot being written about, a lot being spoken about, but certainly people are very important. You have to have the right people in place who understand the goal. What are we trying to get accomplished in an organization? Why are we doing this change? We want to have the right processes in place so that we can say, all right, do we have broken processes? Or if we want repeatable processes, we have to understand what those processes are. And then we have technologies that will help us leverage the best people and the best processes, combine that with leadership who's going to drive the initiative, and you really have something. And again, that's something, Rhonda, that your team and our team can really help people with get started.
Yeah, and I think everybody's kind of clicking on the polling question. So if you looked away for 2 seconds, that polling question is up there now. So take a peek at that and help us out here. So which ones are important to DevOps success, to your success, to your organization's success? I mean, really curious where you guys are positioning this thinking in terms of what's relevant to you.
This is always
today.
a fun one, Rhonda, because I ask this question. I tweet it out every now and then, or I'll put it on LinkedIn, and it looks like the answer is usually yes. It looks like with our responses, we're coming in about the same. Is it people, is it processes, is it technology? It's usually not equal, but I'll let you share the results once they're in, but it looks like this is consistent with what I hear everywhere.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. All right, guys, hopefully we gave you enough time to click away on this one. And I'm going to go ahead and skip to the results. And looks like process is coming in ahead, thinking about the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, it's neck and neck. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to close the poll so you guys can see we try to have fun with what we're doing over here in DevOps world. But this is really good stuff, and we truly appreciate you answering these questions. There's only 2 more questions in this whole webinar, so thank you so much for providing your insights.
Yeah, that's interesting on the process coming out in the lead on that, because I hear people more frequently than I do process. That's my anecdote. Rhonda, what do you hear?
I hear process quite a bit. I never really hear that technology is neck and neck. It's usually process and people. But I have seen some companies leverage technology to kind of nudge the process improvement versus trying to map out the process and then fit the technology. So I've seen it both ways, but this is pretty consistent.
I would invite people to read the DevOps report that was released out at the DevOps Summit, and it talks about these things as well, but it also speaks about companies who are successful and who are winning in the DevOps world and are delivering applications faster and leading their marketplace. They certainly have people and process in place, but they're saying automation is essential. So it may not have as many votes, but it's certainly without the automation, they're getting nowhere. So they all 3 are quite important.
Yes, indeed. All right, guys. So again, gonna check you to make sure you're watching your screen. We're gonna have a couple slides about streamlining and chaos, and then we're gonna ask you some questions about continuous integration, continuous deploy, test-driven development, code scanning, and infrastructure as code. So that question is coming up quick. So as you think about the reality, are you guys looking to do transformations? And transformation is a big word. I mean, I have a master's degree in transformation, so I don't want anybody to go, oh my gosh, that's too much. But maybe it's just a transition into a specific area to help just improve. I call it knocking over a domino at a time versus trying to build a mansion here. And so are you guys looking at how do you transform today's chaos? And maybe it's not chaos. Maybe that's a strong word. But maybe it's just a little uncomfortable the way things are released today, and your release weekends might be painful if you're participating in that in particular. But how do you streamline these release events? And so as we look at DevOps, we're looking at planning, better planning, as a piece. You don't have to start there, but it'd be nice if you did. How do you track these efforts and make sure that the release kickoffs and the allocation of these different environments as this capability travels through the pipeline all the way to the consumer to go in there and use it? So how do you plan that? Are you tracking the status of your dev test efforts? Are you going back and saying, oh, we should have tested that a little better because now we have to do a little bit of rework? How are you monitoring and mitigating your risk? And so in that particular space, again, we've seen some companies literally pull the wrong code out of like Maven Central and put it in the build, and then you get out there and it has some vulnerability in it that if you had the right technologies and processes in place, or vice versa, you could have prevented that vulnerability, and so you could have made that code more secure with higher quality, and the consumer experience would have been a lot better. as an example. So not only getting the code or the product to consumer or to production faster, but making sure you're not going back and redoing that, mundane stuff you were doing previously, kind of streamlining that whole thing and checking, gating how that product or that code is getting to production faster. All the way, so there's the governance piece, all the way to, this thing is smooth. So I'll just quickly use an example. I used to work for Harley-Davidson Motor Company, and I went to one of our manufacturing plants, and if you've never seen a motorcycle get built, it is the most amazing thing. From the idea of what that bike's going to look like, for you to purchase it off the dealer's showroom floor, but all the way to, it just starts going through the motions of being an idea, how they build it. It kind of goes through the manufacturing cycle, all the way to testing it in this roll test simulator. And so I look at push-button standard processes and deployments and how they built that bike that I watched come off that assembly line, and it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. And so for you guys, I'm not sure if that resonates with you, but again, as a consumer goes out there and uses the phone for banking or buys that Harley-Davidson motorcycle or goes into your healthcare provider or whatever it is you support, think about how you're planning, tracking, making sure it's quality, so governance, all the way to getting it out there in the consumer hands. So that's really what we're trying to help you do, is achieve these streamlined release events before we go into the next slide, which I'm going to stop here so Greg can provide some insights, because the next slide is going to be more of a reality for a lot of the companies we work for. So for Greg, do you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we talk a lot about speed and transformation and being able to deliver applications faster, but it isn't always about speed, because there are a lot of different companies and organizations that governance is hugely important to them. So, for example, any kind of government across the world, regulations change constantly. Having visibility to the governance is hugely important. And if you're going really fast, that's sometimes that we forget to do. Making sure that we have the proper testing, making sure we have the proper planning, all of those things are hugely important in it. And in order to really optimize these things, you need to take a look at your own internal practices, find out where your bottlenecks are, and figure out which of these that you need the most help, which of these are the most important to your organization. It's going to be different for all of you, but oftentimes when I go back to customers and ask them what is the most important thing that you've been able to get out of the DevOps system, they'll say, yeah, it's by far governance. So there's no way we could do it. Think of our healthcare industry, how that's been disrupted over the last 8 years and looks like it's going to continue to be disrupted. There's going to be an awful lot of regulations and governance around that, which requires a lot of new code to be developed and has to be reactive and responsive. New markets are going to be defined, and those who are able to get there in the highest level of quality in the shortest period of time are going to be the winners.
Yeah, and so I know we're coming up 15 minutes before the top of the hour, and again, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us for this hour so we can talk to you about what we're doing and get your opinions about how this resonates with you. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I really just want it to be a cartoonish point of view of what's your reality check. And, as you think about a day in your life, what resonates with you guys, are you seeing where you're getting the capabilities and development, but then there's some bottleneck to getting that code out to the consumer like we've been talking about, which is really the most important thing. How are you getting new capabilities in the hands of your customers, and how is IT adding value so that, we're not the bottleneck, if you will, or maybe somebody's on vacation and you're having these manual mental checks, emails, walking up to folks' desks, or maybe Mike or Sally, who's down there in the bottom, is not here, and there's no way to really get past the release because the people, the process, and the technology just aren't working well together. And so we're not going to dwell on this slide, but what we just want you to think about is what's your reality check? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, another element to this too is predictability. And when I speak to customers, one of the sorest points they have is they can't really predict accurately when an application is going to be released. We're going to say it's going to be done in 15 days or 30 days or 60 days. It comes close to the end of the period of time. Do they really know? right? So by having good people in place, proper processes in place, and technology that's going to give you visibility, and then even now we move further into there's more analytics that are available, so we can take a look and see how do we do throughout this life cycle of the application. Did we actually go faster? Where were the things that slowed us down, and what can we do to improve them? So we're starting to see a lot of things in the way of analytics that are really going to help with that, make it more cognitive so we can move even more effectively into the future.
All right, guys, hope you're looking at your screen because here comes that polling question. So as you think about your reality and you think about that thought leadership and what you're trying to achieve, we're just curious. You can select any that apply. I think you can select all of them if it applies to you. But what's important to you? And if you were to reach out for help, what if we were your MapQuest? I would rather be your Waze, actually, because I'm going to give you a way around any kind of accidents on the road or whatever. What would you think would be the most important thing? So as we continue to grow our thought leadership and partner with these industry leaders, we are seeing specific areas bubble up time and time again, at least on the Perficient side. Continuous integration, continuous deploy are hot items previously. And so those are becoming pretty consistent. Things that are coming up more are test-driven development, so shift left, getting the testing in place sooner rather than later. Code quality, so that whole vulnerability scanning or third-party dependency scanning is coming up, especially with all the security stuff. Again, I see it on TV myself all the time. Infrastructure as code, so getting the ops folks to start thinking about versioning, how they deploy middleware or middleware patterns. And so, Greg, jump in here, but to me, I'm wondering, what are you guys seeing in your companies?
We're
Greg,
seeing,
yeah.
We're seeing a lot of similar things that are coming up on the screen right here, right now. There's a greater awareness than there ever was. Like I said earlier, 3 years ago, we're out telling people that you have to be doing continuous integration, continuous delivery. And today I see that there's a lot of companies that are working towards that. And continuous release is something that isn't on there, but is also very important as well. So I think what we're seeing here is an accurate reflection. Companies are focusing on continuous delivery, continuous integration still. I see companies that are focusing on the enterprise. So how do we might have one or two groups or divisions that are doing well? How do we expand that and go bigger? How do we make it broader for organization?
Look at that, though.
Look
at this.
Pretty remarkable.
Interesting. Yeah, continuous deployment. So there's that ARA, application release automation, is a big deal. And the continuous build or continuous integration, so the ability to position your build artifact faster. And this is pretty interesting with the scanning. So security is a pretty important factor, it looks like, with you guys in terms of making sure that something wonky is not out there in your build artifact. Okay, so guys, almost done. Again, appreciate your time today. Hopefully we can hold your attention for about 10 more minutes. So this next section, we're going to talk about some scenarios. There's only 3, so there's only 3 slides. But this is what we're seeing as we work with customers that are really Agile focused, or maybe they're traditionally focused, so Waterfall. And then there's a more targeted entry point that we'll get to in just a minute. And so for this slide, Perficient is seeing these areas, which kind of tie back to that poll. Continuous integration, continuous delivery are pretty hot items. And so as you think about a fully autonomous solution, you kind of got to do the stuff to the left to get to the far right, but you don't have to start at the left. You can start pretty much anywhere. But these are going to be your speed paths, if you will, to success. So, Greg, for you guys, I'm sure you're seeing similar things.
Yes, we are. And again, I think your survey reflects that completely, right? The one that we just showed. So this matches up very nicely.
Yeah, and so here's a second scenario. So again, we're going to ask you guys, we're going to ask you guys in just a minute which scenario resonates with you. So as you're looking at your screen, remember these. And so this is a more traditional. This one is pretty similar to the first one, but it's more traditional. So this is typically an organization that I would say is already doing something in DevOps, and maybe it's maturing in certain areas and not other areas, and so maybe they just want test automation. And so this is kind of a more waterfall approach point of view. And so I don't know, Greg, if you want to hit on this one before I go to the next one.
Yeah, so again, this is a slide that's talking about how we go from source code to continuous delivery and all the different elements that are in there. These are all important elements, and again, must take a look at your organization and see which one of these are working and which ones aren't. And as you mature in your processes, you should be able to, for example, if you start to do build automation faster, then that's going to put more pressure on your continuous integration and your release automation because we're doing more builds than we did before. So as you start to automate, all the things as we move from left to right start to become more important for you.
And so I'll just hit this question really quick. Regarding predictability, how do we, I'm just going to give the cliff notes, streamline from waterfall to agile. So folks, here's the thing. There's this term, psychological safety. A lot of times when you do waterfall, you're given this big bang approach. A lot of times. I'm not saying that all the time. Agile is more about trusting that failure is really a good thing and it'll help you get ahead. And so it's not going to happen overnight to go from waterfall to agile, but there are ways that we can help you show that having a 2-week sprint, checking everybody every day for 15 minutes or every other day or whatever, there's a methodology for agile that we can help you through and show the comparison. Sometimes the comparison helps others understand the difference and helps them kind of get their head around why you would transition from waterfall to agile. And so those are those first 2 slides. This one is more of an entry point slide. And so you can do waterfall or agile. We prefer agile because, again, it opens the communication lines. And so here, this is more of a steer, planning, dev test, focusing on dev test builds, things like that, and then release deploy transitions more into the operations side of the fence, and then monitor optimizes, obviously monitoring and that feedback loop. And so this is the third scenario. This is mostly an IBM point of view. And so just, Greg, I know you're going to add something here, but the polling question is coming up. So thinking of these 3 scenarios as we wrap up this third one, I want you guys to think about which one applies to you or would you want to apply to you. So Greg, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, really, as you take a look at it, and I think the slides will be made available to you, this slide really gives some indications of where you are on the maturity of your optimization and your software delivery processes. And what I'd encourage you to do is take a look and see where are you in which one of these silos with you. Are you already there? Do you have it where you're doing it? Is it repeatable? Is it reliable? Is it scalable? Right? So you start to take a look at those things. These are key questions, especially as we're taking a look at can we do this for more than one team within our organization. Maybe even taking a look at our own team. Our dev test might be going really well, but our deploy and release not so much, or our monitor and optimization really well and some of the other things behind it. So take a look at that, and it's a way for you to self-assess where you are, and it's certainly something that both Rhonda's and our organization at IBM here can help you with.
Yep. So, okay, guys, unleash the questions. Go ahead and start answering the poll.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, the question that we had on the managers having to do waterfall because of the requirements ahead of time, I think what you really get to in that is the better visibility that you have, the more confidence you're going to have moving out of waterfall into agile. And you'll start to see that you'll be able to deliver in a different way than you ever have before. I would suggest that if you need to have an agile coach or something, Rhonda and her team can help you. We have some folks here at IBM as well that can come in and go through this with you. You might start by reading the Continuous Delivery book by Jez Humble and David Farley. That's a really good way to start to answer those types of questions and read where the benefits would be to your organization, help you socialize it throughout.
Yep. Okay. All right. I think we're going to have to skip to the results. We got 4-minute warning. I know you guys are just anxious to get back to work and get off our webinar here. Just joking. Okay. So modern maturity. Okay. Good. I like that. I like that a lot. That helps you get to achieve success faster, candidly. So appreciate those responses. And then just a few more things, and we're going to wrap up here. And so this particular slide, again, coming from y'all's side of the fence, I came up with this Jumpstart Accelerator. There's no polling question to this. I just want you to think about it. If you're using cloud, is this something you would be interested on the cloud? If you're not using cloud, is it something you would be interested in terms of on-prem? And so really this is just something food for thought for you guys to be thinking about as you spent the last hour with us, to know that from a thought leadership perspective, we are putting together Jumpstart Accelerators, and they're relatively inexpensive to get you going all the way to sticking with you the whole way through all these blue boxes from left to right. And so that's all this is to let you know that we are thinking about the game plan for you. And then, just to wrap it up here, hopefully you all have been given your questions in the box there. Or if you want, you can get us online. I'm on Twitter, Greg's on Twitter, LinkedIn. You can get a hold of us. But really interested in how we can help you achieve success, no matter how small, no matter how big. And just really appreciate your time today, hanging out with us for the last hour and providing such wonderful feedback to what we're doing over here.
So it looks like we've run out of time for questions. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat window, and we'll answer them after the webinar. The recording and the slide deck will be available to you through email. Thank you so much, Rhonda and Greg. Really interesting discussion, and we appreciate everybody's time for joining. Thanks, and have a great day.